final round before our version of the summer shutdown, although this is mostly just to fill in the 1995 FF1M season, which is coming up soon. Trust me, you're not going to want to miss that one, should be a good one. This is round 11 of the 2018 FF1M Championship, and it takes place at one of the most unpredictable races of the season, the Hungaroring, one of the shorter circuits on the calendar. I believe it's the only one aside from Monaco which the lap is less than 4 kilometres long, just 3.975 according to the graphic. 76 laps to be expected and a mixture of 2 or 3 pit stops. And last season saw Väinö Kimmonen win for Tornado, and that was on his way to his World Championship, which was more than deserved, and he also holds the lap record of 1 minute 7.521. Will that be beaten this season? Who knows? But previous winners include Lewis Hamilton, Felipe Massa, which was one of the more unexpected winners of the 2015 season. I think everybody was going off on that particular race, except for Massa, because he was running on the hard tyres. Another unpredictable race result came in 2013, courtesy of Valtteri Bottas. GRM's first win ever, I think, and that was Bottas's first win as well. A wet race, and lots of things went wrong for FJR in that race, but they're doing okay in this particular meeting because it was during Friday Practice B where Katarina Caracciola led the way from Kevin Magnussen, and both were about 4/10 quicker than anyone else. Practice A was topped by Fernando Alonso, but it was the two Ajayrious who topped Friday qualifying A, Farina ahead of Clark, and as is the norm this season, Galaxy haven't bothered. None of their drivers were last though, that was Antonio Giovinazzi, but because of George Russell's talent, Tilsley make it into the race once again. And qualifying B, FJR's topped that session, Caracciola ahead of Magnussen. Caracciola was on a 1 minute 7.4, and Magnussen a 1 minute 7.8. Caracciola was 3/10 quicker than anyone else. And AJ failed to make it into the race this time around. The second consecutive race that AJ failed to qualify. Saturday practice was topped by Kevin Magnussen, so it was looking good for FJR, and it was looking good for them in qualifying because on pole for the second time in her career is Katarina Caracciola ahead of Kevin Magnussen. And Magnussen himself, he was 3/10 behind Caracciola, but he was 6/10 ahead of Alessandro Farina in the Gajera, who qualifies third, with the other Gajera fourth, courtesy of James Clark. Sebastian Vettel, committed to using the hard tyres for this particular meeting, is fifth on the grid, ahead of Chuck Bucknam sixth. Then we got the first of the two Tornadoes, Väinö Kimmonen seventh, ahead of the first of the two Willows, Max Verstappen in eighth. Nolan Bryant is the highest of the two shake and bakes. Fernando Alonso seemingly off the pace come qualifying, he'll be coming up a bit later on. But it's Lewis Hamilton 10th ahead of the two GRMs, Sergio Perez 11th and Valtteri Bottas 12th. Can he repeat his 2013 victory? Highly unlikely is the answer to that. Daniel Ricciardo 13th ahead of Fernando Alonso way down in 14th. And he's just not on the pace it seems, he was only 9th quickest in warm-up. Bryant was 13th quickest in warm-up, more on those positions later on. Charles Leclerc 15th ahead of George Russell 16th, then the first of the two CBAs down in 17th place. They're not on the pace in qualifying, but they did do okay in the warm-up, so they may have a good race. Esteban Ocon 18th, splitting the two CBAs, Thomas Gonzalez 19th, Roman Grosjean 20th, and in the back row filled by Antonio Giovinazzi 21st, and last on the grid Nico Hülkenberg 22nd. Such is the unpredictable nature of the Hungaroring in that this is the 24th meeting and we've had 20 different pole sitters. Only 4 drivers have taken 2 pole positions, no drivers taken 3, and those 4 drivers, Katarina Caracciola, David Coulthard, Jarno Trulli and Roman Grosjean, being multiple pole sitters around this circuit. Multiple different winners as well, as to remember Timo Glock winning the 2005 race. Michael Schumacher won 2004, as for the other drivers. Michael Schumacher also won 2000 and 2001. Michael went very well at this circuit in FF1M. Seem to remember him winning quite a lot of races. So, we're getting ready for the start. You can see another new camera angle for this, and the 5 lights are on. There's the brief pause. Wait for the 5 lights to go out. And who gets away best out of the 2 front row drivers? Looked at pretty even between Caracciola and Magnussen down into the first corner. And Caracciola just about hanging on to the lead. I think Farina's trying to have a look at Kevin Magnussen around the outside, but Magnussen holding on to second position. Now let's see the respective fuel loads. Hulkenberg's got quite a lot of fuel on board, so he must be 2 stopping. Caracciola didn't have a lot of fuel. She must be 3 stopping. And the warm-up was topped by Kevin Magnussen ahead of Caracciola, and both FJR drivers were 4/10ths quicker than anyone else, so they seem to be the car to beat at this Hungaroring meeting. James Clark in 4th has also got a light fuel load. Most of them have got light fuel loads, but you can see in the top graphic, if you've got more than 20 odd laps of fuel, then you may well be 3 stopping. Well, 2 stopping, sorry. More than 20 laps, 2 stops. Less than that, probably 3 stops. And around the first lap, it looks as if Kevin Magnussen is up for this one. He's piling the pressure on his teammate, who is going round the penultimate corner. I've given some of these corners names. I'll have to try and remember them as the race goes on. But onto the start-finish straight to complete the first lap and start the second lap. Magnussen's also lightly fuelled and is the fastest driver out on the circuit at the moment. And up the inside, Kymmenen versus Sebastian Vettel. Väinö Kymmenen has moved up into 5th place. Now look at Magnussen, he is wanting that race lead from Caracciola. Both FJRs doing fairly similar approaches to their setup, although in the warm-up it was a little bit different. I think Magnussen was focusing on aero setup and Caracciola was making sure she had some good tyres for the race. So there's a little insight as to what FJR have been up to for the Hungaroring meeting, as we look at Väinö Kymmenen up into 5th place and closing in on the 2 Ajayrious. Kymmenen was 7th quickest in the warm-up. Leclerc was down in 15th on the grid, but 3rd quickest in the warm-up, so he may do well in the race. Here's a replay of Roman Grosjean. We usually see accidents at this corner here, turn 11, a lacy corner, but a harmless spin for Roman Grosjean as he does a nice little pirouette, fronts it into the barrier, but engages reverse gear and sets off back into the race, but down in last place, on board with Kevin Magnussen, who is still right behind Caracciola. Both FJRs were a fair bit quicker than the 2 Ajayrious on that lap by 7/10ths of a second. But it does appear that Magnussen is the quicker driver at this stage of the race as they go through a lacy corner. Now through the Taki Inui chicane. More a pith path than a proper chicane. It was a quick right and a clunk over the left-hand curbs. Now the final 2 corners. This is the final one now. Pit entrance on the right, with the barrier starting roughly halfway through the corner. And Magnussen in the slipstream. Just 2/10ths is the gap. Caracciola going a bit defensive. So therefore Magnussen taking a bit of caution. As we look at the 2 Ajayrious from on board Väinö Kymmenen. Safely through a lacy corner, now through Inui. And that was pretty safe as well. Further back we've got the 2 Mitchells in 7th and 8th place. Lewis Hamilton has gained a place since the start of the race at the expense of Nolan Bryant. I'm just trying to see who hasn't made such a good start at the top. Well, Max Verstappen way down in 17th, 16th place, so I don't know if something has happened to Max Verstappen, if he's just had a bit of a poor first few laps. There's the 2 Mitchells going to combat, going into hill/PK corner. Both did spectacular overtakes in real life. Take your pick as to what that corner should be called. I might interchange between the 2. Kymmenen having a look at James Clark going into Furman corner, or Felipe Massa corner, now the Irvine right. Irvine's mistake at that corner in the real 99 season arguably cost him the championship. Who knows? Now through the Baumgartner S's. Nothing to do with how Zolt Baumgartner drove the circuit, just nice to have a few corners named after a Hungarian racing driver. It's still Väinö Kymmenen 5th, chasing James Clark. He may do it at the start of this next lap, coming up lap 6, with the 2 FJRs still leading 1st and 2nd. As we now switch focus, is this Grosjean or is this Verstappen going through... Oh, a big twitch going through 11, a lacy corner, and just like his teammate, Max Verstappen has a bit of a spin, and he's going to rejoin. Is he going to let Grosjean through? He's waiting. There goes Roman, and back into the race goes Verstappen. Now we switch focus to the two FJRs. This is now on lap 8, and both have still been much quicker than the two Ajayrious, but now in the slipstream, into the first corner, nearly contact between the two, but just luckily avoided that, and still Caracciola leads the race. As now we divert attention to the two Mitchells once again, and they're going to avoid contact. Is Lewis Hamilton going to make it up the inside of Chuck Bucknam? He's side by side through Hill PK corner. Now we go through into the Hamilton left, as he invented a new overtake round this corner. And it was a good one as well. Round the outside of 3, that's Mansell corner. And still side by side, but it's Chuck Bucknam who holds position at the moment. Lewis Hamilton in between a rock of Chuck Bucknam and the hard place of Nolan Bryant. An American sandwich, actually. As through Baumgartner, through the left, and it's still Lewis Hamilton chasing Chuck Bucknam. Now as we go into turn number 11, that's a little bit wide from Bucknam, a bit too wide at the exit, and that's let both Hamilton and Bryant through. Luckily no spin for Chuck Bucknam as he drops to 9th, and out of the race goes Daniel Ricciardo. That is a failed climax at the back of his car. Andrew's season kind of hasn't really gone to plan. Makes you wonder why I even picked them as favourites if it was going to go that way, but anyway, that looks a bit closer for Magnussen. Going into turn 1, still Caracciola defends, but this time she has to give way, and Kevin Magnussen takes the lead of the race. Now I'm expecting him, he's already pulling away from his teammate. This looks like Magnussen's race to lose, depending on how slippery the circuit is, if he can hold on with his medium Goodyears, and if reliability holds on for the two FJRs. There's yellow flags. That must be for the blown-engined Ricciardo. That's where he pulled off the circuit. And look at the gap that Magnussen's already pulled out over Caracciola. Although Caracciola still holding on a bit. The two are 6.3 seconds ahead of Alessandro Farina. Now we've got a pit stop coming for Väinö Kymmänen at the end of this lap, lap 13. And he's still stuck behind James Clark, so it is proving quite tricky to overtake, but if you can get a good enough run out of the final corner, you can make it stick. Just seeing the rest of the order. So, Valtteri Bottas is in 10th place, the 2013 winner. Sergio Perez 11th behind his teammate, so Bottas did get the jump on his Mexican teammate. As Kevin Magnussen's also coming into the pits at the end of this lap. So going for that 3-stop strategy, both FJRs 3-stopping. I'm expecting Caracciola to be in at the end of the next lap. I'm also expecting tyre wear to be quite high. The last race at Hockenheim we saw very, very low tyre wear, which may have been the reason why Kevin Magnussen switched from a 2 to a 1-stop strategy. He came in very early on lap 14, and the team decided to just tank the car up and just go to the end of the race, doing 30 laps essentially on one set of tyres. Dropped him from first down to 5th come the end. So probably the wrong strategy, although the Ajayrious were very quick in that race. As were the two Tornadoes. It was Alessandro Farina who won at Hockenheim, returned to winning ways, having last won at Aragon. That was round 4. Took until round 10 to win another race. That was the driver who finished second, who you're looking at, Väinö Kymmänen. James Clark went from 20th to 3rd and won my vote for driver of the day. So that was a good performance. And then 4th was Charles Leclerc, who at the moment is stuck in 11th place behind the two GRMs. Valtteri Bottas now up to 9th place. The other Finn, Väinö Kymmänen, rejoins from his pit stop in between the two CBA drivers. So that's 15th for Kymmänen. As Caracciola comes into the pits, that was at the end of lap 14. So the lap immediately after Kevin Magnussen. And there was a Ajayrious coming into the pits as well. There is James Clark. So Farina staying out for at least another lap. Is he 3-stopping or is he 2-stopping? Well, Kevin Magnussen getting up the inside of Nolan Bryant going into the first corner. It looked quite close. Frighteningly close. Caracciola rejoins behind Bottas, so Bottas temporarily in 6th place now. So how quickly can Caracciola move up ahead of the Flying Finn? How many flying Finns have we had? We've had Keke Rosberg, Mika Häkkinen and Kimi Räikkönen. As we look at Magnussen already caught up to the back of Lewis Hamilton. That's basically 3 seconds in one lap that Magnussen has taken out of Hamilton, who is in the slipstream of Sebastian Vettel. Is Hamilton going to make the move on Vettel into the first corner? He is side by side. This is a delay that Magnussen could have done without, as Caracciola gets up the inside of Valtteri Bottas into the first corner. And a solid position swap between Vettel and Hamilton, so at some point Hamilton must have gotten ahead, but then Vettel resuming second place temporarily. Through 11 goes second, third and fourth. It is Farina leading at the moment. Is he going to start another lap, or is he going to come into the pits? Keep an eye on the counter at the bottom of your screen. Farina starting another lap. So I wonder what strategy he's gone for. He was 6th quickest in the warm-up. And who's going to make this move? They're all separated by less than 0.4 of a second. It looks like Hamilton tried to make the move on Sebastian Vettel. And all this is causing Nolan Bryant to catch up to the 3. They're all stuck behind Vettel, and as mentioned before, it's proving very hard to overtake. But luckily for Magnussen, Lewis Hamilton is going to come into the pits at the end of this lap, so that is one headache out of the way. The other FJR's got a headache in the form of Nolan Bryant. There goes Magnussen as Hamilton peels right into the pits. Vettel not pitting just yet. See the speed difference coming out the final corner. Difference between old and new tyres. Is Caracciola going to get up the inside of Bryant into the first corner? Bryant defending that one, so Caracciola going to have to wait. And a kerfuffle here. Kymmenen looking to get up the inside of Fernando Alonso, who himself is all over the back of Charles Leclerc. That's a temporarily 7th place battle. And James Clark now ahead of the 2 CBAs. So I think it was Kymmenen who rejoined in between the 2 CBAs. So Kymmenen making advances in his second stint. As through Irvine Corner goes Leclerc, Alonso and Kymmenen through the chicane. Well, let's name that after Alessandro Nannini, because that was one of the more famous incidents of the 1990 race, where Senna nearly flipped Nannini altogether. I think it was Berger and Mansell who collided there a few laps later. In real life, and that was won by Thierry Boutsen. Nolan Bryant was coming into the pits, so Caracciola will move him to 4th place. Can Magnussen move up into 2nd place ahead of Sebastian Vettel? He's pulled out quite early from the slipstream, back into the slipstream as they cross the start-finish line. And Vettel, he was defending, then he went to the outside, and that's possibly why Kevin Magnussen has just moved up into 2nd place. So now Magnussen has got some clear track. How much of that 10-second gap can he close on Farina? He may be two-stopping Alessandro Farina, so it's not a done deal for Kevin Magnussen. So he needs to use this second stint wisely. And was that Vettel coming into the pits at the end of this lap? We'll check on a bit later on, but now Kymmenen has moved ahead of Fernando Alonso. This is on this lap, and we're going to see a replay of it. Down the main straight, and Alonso not bothering to defend that one. And it does seem Shake and Bake are a little bit off the pace. They've been a bit conservative in the last few races. They apparently, at Hockenheim, where you've got a load of straights to play with, they weren't running as much as you were expecting, and that may have been why Alonso could only manage, was it 6th place come the end of the race? I think it was. Yes, it was. Caracciola was 7th, and then Gonzalez, the pole sitter for the German Grand Prix, was 8th. So, and CBAs weren't exactly on the pace in the race, in that race. How many times can you say race in a few seconds? That's Caracciola moving ahead of Sebastian Vettel, as Vettel did indeed pit at the end of this lap, so I think that's still a 3-stop strategy for the Andrew Racing, the only Andrew on the circuit, as Daniel Ricciardo is out of the race, as the 2 Tornadoes swap position. That's Kymmenen getting ahead of Leclerc. Looks like Leclerc is on a 2-stop strategy, as he stayed out fair bit compared to Kymmenen, who is on those fresher tyres, and now he's looking at Valtteri Bottas. that's not the place to do it around the outside of 4. He'll have to wait until the start of the next lap, and in all probability the Tornado is the faster car in a straight line compared to GRM. Probably the faster car anyway. But it's a slightly better showing from GRM at this meeting. Bottas is up in 4th, yet to stop. Perez has stopped. He's 14th behind Nolan Bryant, ahead of George Russell. That's the first mention of George Russell at the moment. As Farina starts another lap, I'm pretty sure he's on a 2-stop strategy. And Kevin Magnussen was 2.4 seconds quicker than the Gajera driver on that lap. As rounding the final corner, it's the 2 Finns about to go into combat. Valtteri Bottas versus Väinö Kimminen. Can Kimminen use his fresh tyres to outbrake Bottas into the first corner? Of course he can. Väinö Kimminen moving up into 4th place. And at this rate, he probably will jump Alessandro Farina. So Farina staying out longer, probably on a 2-stop strategy. That might come into play a little bit later on in the race. As now James Clark has a look at Valtteri Bottas. Yeah, GRM sit 12th in the Team's Championship, which isn't really where I was expecting them at the start of the season. I think I've put them, was it 7th or 8th for the end of the season. Might have to revisit my predictions to get confirmation on that. As rounding Baumgartner S's into a lacy corner, it is still Valtteri Bottas who's choosing to defend going into Inouye corner. From James Clark, another 2.2 seconds Magnussen took out of Farina on that lap. And he's dragging Caracciola along with him. Caracciola sits 4.5 seconds behind Magnussen. And Väinö Kimminen doing quite well, up in 4th place. As James Clark moves up ahead of Valtteri Bottas. I nearly missed that altogether, I was thinking about something else. Now we've got Lewis Hamilton after Mason Taylor. That is the battle for 8th place. As on lap 23, Magnussen is now right up the back of Alessandro Farina, who is not quick. Old tyres, no doubt. So tyre wear is very high for this race. Rounding the final corner. About to start lap 24, and Magnussen right up the back of Alessandro Farina. The gap just a fraction over a tenth of a second. Farina being very aggressive with his defence, but it's not enough as Kevin Magnussen retakes the lead on track. Now Farina needs to watch out because his tyres are knackered, and he'll have a rampant Caracciola all over the back of him soon. Just trying to ascertain whether James Clark is quicker than Väinö Kimminen at the moment. Kimminen was one of the first pitters on lap 13. Looks like it looks like Kimminen is just slightly quicker than James Clark at the moment. So Kimminen looking to move up into 3rd place once Farina makes his first pit stop. Talking of first pit stops, it is Valtteri Bottas into the pits. And that's a CBA behind as well. I think that's Mason Taylor. Into his garage, which are totally mismatched. But there's some nice brick aesthetics on the garage walls there. 4.7 seconds, very good pit stop for Bottas, and definitely a 2-stop strategy. As he rejoins in 15th place. If tyre wear is high, then his new tyres could work out okay, and he could make some advances a bit later on. Fernando Alonso was the fastest driver on that last lap, as finally into the pits comes Alessandro Farina. That will resume an FJR 1-2. And when was the last time that FJR had a 1-2? You have to look back to 2006. That was when they last had 2 cars on the podium, let alone a 1-2 finish. And in that 2006 race, it was Michael Schumacher who won from Nico Rosberg. And Nico Rosberg's 2nd place won him his only championship. Didn't win another championship since, but it's still quite an elite club. As rejoining in 5th place, that's about right for Farina, and crucially ahead of Charles Leclerc, who has yet to stop anyway. Lewis Hamilton was the fastest driver on the circuit on the last lap, and he's very much catching up to Charles Leclerc, whose tyres are a bit knackered now at this stage. So it's not really working out well for Leclerc. There he is in the pits, and he was already down in 13th place. Is it going to be 14th? Yes. Is it going to be 15th? Because Mason Taylor just crossed the line. Yes. So back into a CBA sandwich goes a Tornado, but this time it's Charles Leclerc. So what's the race order like at the moment, as we have gone past 1/3 distance now? Kevin Magnussen leads by 5.3 seconds from Caterina Caracciola. 5.7 now as he starts a new lap. As we look at Chuck Bucknam grimly holding on to 8th place. He's got Perez, Bryant and Alonso all over his 6. As he starts his 28th lap, is Sergio Perez going to have a look at the inside into Hill PK corner? Yes, he is, and he takes that 8th place. Perez desperate for some points. He's got a grand total of none so far this season. So he really does need a result. He's gone past 150 races now, and he's part of the class of 2010 alongside Roman Grosjean and Nico Hülkenberg. Grosjean somehow became the most experienced out of those three when first Hülkenberg was ditched before the season's end last season by Ajayrious. And then Hülkenberg failed to qualify for a few races this season for Monolith. How's he doing in the race? He's down in last place at the moment. Not exactly on the pace. And he's on the hard Goodyear tyres as well. His teammate Esteban Ocon is in 17th place, ahead of Antonio Giovinazzi and both Willows. Gone past a 3rd distance, and we've only had the one retirement so far still, and that is still Daniel Ricciardo. So 21 runners still out there on the circuit. As Nolan Bryant has a look at Chuck Bucknam going into Hill corner. And that is a position gain for the shake and bake. Now it's the turn of the other shake and bake, of Fernando Alonso. And shake and bake looking to reignite something from their championship challenge. It did look as if after Canada that they were going to challenge for one of the two championships, as Alonso had a look going into 4, but the outside line tends not to work. But Alonso was leading the championship after Montreal, but it seems as if shake and bake either Tornado and Gajera woke up, or shake and bake have been running a bit too conservatively with their race setup, particularly on the ERS side, and that's why it's cost them a little bit. And here he is challenging Chuck Bucknam, but it's only for 10th place. Interestingly, since he's made his pit stop, Farina has been lapping very quickly, and there he is, just taking James Clark for 4th place. It could be that when the FJRs make their second pit stops, that Farina could actually get the jump on them. But then the FJR would have the advantage of newer tyres, and Farina on a 2-stop strategy. He will gain track position, no doubt about that, but the tyre wear is so high here that the 3 stops may be the better option, as up the inside of Bucknam goes Fernando Alonso, who is now the most experienced driver on the grid because of Kimi Raikkonen's failings to qualify this season. Alonso's been competing in more races compared to his vastly experienced Finnish friend. Both sit on more than 300 races, but now Alonso is now done more races than Raikkonen. This is a battle for 3rd place we're looking at, Farina versus Kimmonen. It's Farina having a look at Kimmonen, who is defending quite hard into the first corner, but that's not going to stop Farina, who moves up into 3rd place. Now, he's been using his tyres well in this second part of the race. Exactly the same tyres as the two FJRs, but Farina's are considerably younger, and it is tyres making the big difference around here. We are looking at the moment at George Russell holding up a big queue of cars that consist of Valtteri Bottas, Mason Taylor, Charles Leclerc, and the fastest driver out on the circuit at the moment, Thomas Gonzalez. So CBA is showing some good pace in the race, but they're way down in 14th and 16th, having probably focused a bit too much on the race setup, not putting enough attention into their qualifying setup. And as a result, they're a bit stuck. They're a bit stuck behind a Tilsley, which is very fast in a straight line. We've seen that in Road America demonstrated, and we also saw that at the Österreichring, where George Russell was unbelievably fast in the practice sessions and the pre-qualifying sessions. But couldn't quite make it into a points finish. I think Giovinazzi retired quite early. Here is Russell coming under attack from Bottas into the first corner, and Bottas takes that position. So GRM's working quite well around the Hungaroring. They are running a 16C chassis, so their aerodynamics will be relatively well defined compared to that of the Tilsley, who are still in 18 mode. There is going to be a shake-up in aerodynamics next season, a complete reset, so it could completely flip on its head coming to the 2019 season. At the moment we're still in 2018 and we've still got some 40 odd laps to go. Magnussen is sensing the threat from Alessandro Farina. He is lapping pretty quickly, but Farina is lapping just a bit quicker than Magnussen at the moment. So it does look as if that when the FJRs make their second pit stops, that Farina is going to resume in the lead, but on pretty old tyres. Lewis Hamilton is going to come to the pits at the end of lap 34 as Russell versus Taylor versus Leclerc versus Gonzalez going into turn 1 and 2. There's the first shot of Jesse B that we've seen. It's Max Verstappen having a look at Roman Grosjean for 18th place as Lewis Hamilton makes his second pit stop pretty early compared to most of the other two stoppers. So is this a ploy to try and gain track position? Well, it's worked out horribly for Hamilton, rejoined right into that CBA Tornado battle. So he's got some work to do. Let's see how quickly he can clear Leclerc and Taylor. Hamilton on the newest of tyres right this second. I think Chuck Buchanan's also coming into the pits at the end of, this will be the 35th lap. You can see Hamilton's pit indicator is indicating red. That means your teammate is coming into the pits. Through the Nannini chicane goes this queue. Right, it's the Taylor train. Nice bit of alliteration. James Clark into the pits from 5th place. It might have been 4th place. It was 5th place. So he's already behind Vettel. Is he behind Perez? Well, there's some more pit crews out at the moment. Are those the FJR pits? Well, he's being held up because Fernando Alonso is also into the pits, as is Chuck Buchanan. Was that Leclerc? No, it can't have been Leclerc in the pits. And he's still stuck behind the Tornado. He's still stuck behind his CBA. How can Leclerc be stuck behind himself? Yeah, Taylor lapping pretty quickly, and that is absolutely trashing the strategy of Charles Leclerc, who stayed out longer than most on the two-stop strategy. That's Magnussen, race leader, into the pits. He certainly won't jump Farina, but that was a good pit stop, 5.4 seconds. Is he going to stay ahead of Väinö Kimonen, I wonder? That's going to be close into the first corner. Magnussen remains in 3rd place. That is fairly crucial as to his race. About 1.5 seconds is the gap between himself and the world champion. And Sebastian Vettel doing quite well, considering that he wasn't all that spectacular in warm-up. Is Leclerc finally going to make the move on Taylor? Well, he sort of is doing. Yes, he is. Charles Leclerc moving up past Mason Taylor for 9th place. Now, can he use his race pace to some effect? Because he has got some clear track now, and his target is Valtteri Bottas. Difficult to see what the gap is between himself and Leclerc. Something 0.8 seconds. And how quickly can Leclerc catch up? Well, Bottas is only there, so the gap is something like 2.8 seconds. Now it's Lewis Hamilton who is going to try and pass what is a CBA that's very hard to overtake, because they usually run quite aggressively on the ERS setting. And I think, was that on his outlap? Magnussen was considerably faster than both Farina and Kinnunen. The gap between Magnusson and Kinnunen, 4.3.5 seconds. And Sebastian Vettel fairly lonely in 5th place, so it's been a solid performance from the Andrew. Perez in 6th place now, so his strategy's worked quite well, but he has got Nolan Bryant quite close behind. That's Lewis Hamilton versus Mason Taylor into the first corner, and Hamilton on much fresher tyres takes the CBA, whose tyres are starting to get a bit old now. Even though they are lapping pretty quickly on the circuit, maybe the two-stop strategy, it was to gain track position over others, maybe it's not really working out. And 2.5 seconds was the gap between Farina and Magnusson as they started this lap, but that has in one lap shrunk to nothing. Well, not quite, just over 0.3 of a second, so expecting Magnusson to make a move at the start of the next lap. Caracciola's going to come into the pits at the end of this lap, as Farina all over the place on the circuit. I think he was in Balaton Park. Through turn 2, but it's now into turn 4. All over the back of Farina is Kevin Magnusson. Just seen Nolan Bryant overtake Sergio Perez, who's dropping down the order because he's in the pits. So Sergio Perez, 3 stopping for this race. So that could come into play later on. Let's hope Perez gets some points actually. He doesn't have a single point on board this season. As through 11, that's a Lacey corner. Now through the Inui pith path. No medical car on the right. As defending into 12, which I don't have a name for yet, goes Farina, now into the final corner. Sponsored by Vodafone and a few others on the left-hand side. Can Magnusson get ahead of Farina at the start of lap 40? Well, he's having a look at the inside, but not quite making that one stick. I think there was a bit of straight line speed that Magnusson needed. As Caracciola being held up, that was Väinö Kimmionen's the reason for that. I was going to say fault, but you can't exactly blame Kinnunen for making a pit stop. Rejoining in a fairly lonely 3rd place goes Caracciola. So she can fly on this set of tyres, and if Farina holds up Magnusson for a fair bit, then it could be a 3-way fight for the lead. That was Charles Leclerc making his way past Valtteri Bottas. Hamilton making his way past Bottas as well, so Bottas having a pretty poor run through the first corner. And through the final corner, that's your race leader, championship leader as well, having won 4 races this season. Magnusson looking for his first race win this season. He's looking at the inside into the first corner. Farina jinks back on the outside, which costs him the race lead. Kevin Magnusson resumes in the lead, and as both have one more pit stop to make, I'm expecting Magnusson to rocket away into the distance. Through Mansell corner, and Farina's older tyres. Now, how quickly can Caracciola catch up to Farina in this stint? And more than that, how quickly can Lewis Hamilton get ahead of Charles Leclerc? Through the first corner, Hamilton having stopped twice, Leclerc just the once, and it's the newer tyres which are making the difference for Lewis Hamilton up into 5th place. And he started 10th on the grid, but he was 4th quickest in the warm-up, so Hamilton showing some good pace in this race. As next on Bottas's 6 is James Clark. Through the top S's, the highest part of the circuit. And catching up to those two is Mason Taylor. So Taylor and also Gonzalez and Alonso and Vettel. Alonso and Vettel have stopped twice, so they are much quicker than Thomas Gonzalez at this stage of the race. But as mentioned before, the CBA is also the most difficult car to overtake. How difficult is Bottas going to be into the first corner? Not very is the answer, as James Clark effortlessly moves up into 7th place. But Alonso struggling to make his way past the CBA of Thomas Gonzalez. Now, see the gap between Farina and Caracciola. That was 1 second in the final sector alone. So Caracciola on the march as she tries to catch up to Farina and tries to make it an FJR 1-2. Still just the one retirement in this race, and we've gone beyond half distance, and it is still Daniel Ricciardo, the only retirement of this race. 6/10 taken out of Farina in the first sector. The second sector point comes just before a Lacey corner. So we've got 5 more corners to find out how much Caracciola takes out of Farina in this middle sector. It's Magnussen who is the fastest driver out on the circuit at the moment. Followed by Kinnunen, followed by Caracciola, followed by Hamilton, and then Perez. That is 1 whole second that Caracciola took out of Farina in the middle sector, so 1.6 seconds so far on this lap. And if that pattern continues through the final sector, then it'll be 2.6 come the end of this lap. Let's see the gap as she crosses the finish line. Pretty much 1 second there as well. So 2.6 seconds Caracciola took out Farina on that lap. As we switch to James Clark chasing Charles Leclerc. That's a battle for 6th place. Remember, Leclerc is 2-stopping in this race and starting to struggle now on old tyres. It looks as if everybody is stuck behind Valtteri Bottas for the final point. You got Bottas, Taylor, Gonzalez, Alonso, Vettel, probably Perez. Don't think Russell and Bucknam are part of that battle yet, but both are lapping significantly faster than those in front of him up to Bottas. Nolan Bryant must have made another pit stop, his second of the race, because he's now down in 16th place. Not looking good for Shake and Bake in this race unless they can miraculously salvage some points. Through 11 goes Kinnunen. It's Leclerc and Clark, actually. And Kinnunen's way ahead of this lot. And the fastest on the circuit, actually. So Kinnunen looking to try and close in on Magnussen, Farina and Caracciola. As through the final corner goes the battle for 6th. Can James Clark make a move going into the first corner? Gap was just 1.115 of a second, but it is now James Clark ahead of Charles Leclerc. That's 6th place for the Greater Manchester driver. Now, can he do something about Lewis Hamilton? Well, we're going to switch to this train that's stuck behind Bottas. Trying to think of something alliterative to describe that. The Bottas blockade, there you go. And how many is in the blockade? Well, it's soon to be 6. And it consists of Taylor, Alonso, Gonzalez, Vettel and Perez. Through 4, there was some jostling going on behind. It looked like Vettel was shaping up for a move on Gonzalez, but not making that one work. Now, on lap 48, Caracciola has caught up to Farina. Caracciola very quick on that last lap. Don't think she'll make a move. She'll have a speculative look through Furman/Massa corner. Probably going to have to wait until the end of this lap, the start of the next one, to make her move. Unless she can force Farina into a mistake at a Lacey bend, which is possible. It is a very notorious corner. The end of the second sector point comes after this kink of 10 through 11. Didn't look like any mistake from Farina. Sensible driving. And this is helping Magnussen's cause for a race win. And when was the last time that FJR won at Hungary? It's been quite some time. Don't think they won in 08, 07 or 06. No, they didn't. It may have been... Was it 2001 where FJR last won at Hungary? It was a long time ago, but Caracciola moves up into 2nd place ahead of Alessandro Farina, but it's not over yet. Farina is due into the pits very soon, and he is going to use his new tyres to then probably get the jump back on Caracciola for 2nd place. And Caracciola will be staying out a little bit longer, so she'll have the advantage of fresh tyres in the final few laps, but Farina probably will have track position unless she can make a massive gap. Now it's Kinnunen's turn to charge. So despite only being 7th quickest in warm-up, it does appear that Kinnunen does have a good car for the race. I'm just seeing what's happened further back. I think Vettel has just overtaken Thomas Gonzalez for 11th place. Gonzalez's tyres getting very old now. What's the gap between Farina and Kinnunen? Well, it came down by half a second on that lap. On that final sector, actually. Would have come down by considerably more throughout the whole lap. I was a bit worried that an engine had blown up, but it was just the way the pit lane works graphically. But Verstappen is about to be lapped by Charles Leclerc. James Clark has already lapped the Dutchman, who only has the 1 point this season. That was scored at Mugello. Grosjean has 5 points, and that's why Willows sit above the likes of Galaxy, GRM and Tilsley. I think they sit ahead of Monolith as well. Yes, they do. So I think Willows are 9th place in the championship at the moment. Kevin Magnussen starting lap 51 as we cycle through the field, as we look at Farina. So trying to work out when he's going to make his second pit stop. He's still got a fair bit of fuel left over. He is being caught by Väinö Kinnunen and losing time to Caracciola. Now 2.8 seconds behind the Montreux driver and 2.5 ahead of Väinö Kinnunen, who is much quicker at this stage of the race. Now we swap back to Charles Leclerc, who is in between the two Willows, in between the two cars with Jesse B plastered on the cockpit. Valtteri Bottas is continuing his blockade. He's now going to make it a 7-car train because Nolan Bryant is coming into play. And this is all for the final point as well, so it is quite crucial for Valtteri Bottas to hold up the field. And how far back the race leader is bolted? 1 minute 4 behind race leader Kevin Magnussen, who's now making his way past Chuck Bucknam. And still 21 drivers running as we have now hit 2/3 distance. Rounding the final corner goes Alessandro Farina. He's lost 7/10 to Väinö Kinnunen on this lap so far. What will it be at the end of this lap? It will be 1.4 seconds, but Farina is deciding that this is the lap he's going to make his second pit stop. Still got plenty of fuel left over. It's not usually a high fuel consumption circuit. You do spend quite a lot of time off the throttle in these long corners, such as 1, 2, 5 and some other corners as well. That's through Hill. It's not through Hill Corner. It's through Furman Massa Corner. Now exiting Irvine into the Nannini chicane. Right, then left, clunking the curbs. Doing it fairly expertly as he is coming up to some traffic, but now he's in the pits. Kinnunen already ahead. And how quick is this pit stop? Still has a chance of being P2 once Caracciola makes her final pit stop, if Farina puts in some good outlaps. But Caracciola is responding. She was the fastest on the circuit last time round. As through the first corner and comfortably ahead of Lewis Hamilton is Alessandro Farina. So what's the pit time loss? It's about 20 seconds, I'd say. Roman Grosjean into the pits. Willows going for a 2-stop strategy, but they've not been that competitive, unfortunately, in this meeting. Väinö Kinnunen making... It's Charles Leclerc about to make his final pit stop. And he's made his final pit stop before James Clark, so he has got a chance of an undercut on the Altrincham driver, who's yet to win his first race. He's been in FF1M since 2016. He had a brief stint with Kajira and then switched to AJ for 2017. Got a best result of 6th at this circuit, actually. Has had a few podiums this season. He had a 2nd at Aragon and Monaco. A couple of other podiums, I think, as well. He had one at Hockenheim, the last race. But yet to take his first win. That was a key one in the battle for 8th because Mason Taylor has gotten the jump on Valtteri Bottas. And that was kind of crucial to rejoin for Caracciola to remain ahead of Bottas. Bottas on fresher tyres now, so he'll be a bit of a thorn in Caracciola's side for a couple of laps, but she has got a pit stop to make. Now Thomas Gonzalez pitting, rejoining behind Bottas, who has just unlapped himself from Caracciola, so that pretty much should give Alessandro Farina second place. Is Kevin Magnussen, who's going to be the first FJR to pit. That's at the end of lap 56. That'll be a timely pit stop for Magnussen. It'll be interesting to see if he can stay ahead of Caracciola after this pit stop. The gap was 19.1 seconds, as that must have been past the second sector point. Up on his jacks, on go a fresh set of medium Goodyears, his fourth set of the race. 5.1 seconds is a very good pit stop. And Caracciola just crossed the start-finish line there. And she will temporarily lead. But the race surely must belong to Kevin Magnussen, providing that his car can hold on. Caracciola coming into the pits at the end of this lap, so she's going to do away with her knackered set of Goodyears. And it is 16.7 seconds, the gap between herself and Farina. So she will rejoin behind the Gajera driver, but she will have the fresher tyres. Only by about 5 laps, but that could be the crucial difference. As Sebastian Vettel makes his final pit stop. And into the pits comes Caterina Caracciola. That's Chuck Bucknam in the pits. George Russell also into the pits. And curiously, Thomas Gonzalez, the fastest driver on the circuit last time out. Probably on new tyres. Kiminen also into the pits. And order resumed between Caracciola and Kiminen. So they've got the same age of tyres underneath them. And it's up to them to try and catch that driver there, Alessandro Farina. 14.7 seconds is Magnussen's lead. Expecting that to grow as the final stint progresses. We've got some more pitters coming up, and it is Fernando Alonso coming into the pits. Now what can he do? He was 7th as he came into the pits. Set a reasonably fast lap in his race, at 1 minute 10.8, but he's just not had track position nor the qualifying pace. And that is ultimately what has cost Shake and Bake in this particular meeting. At some point, I think it was Montreal actually, they did shift focus from their race meetings in order to concentrate more on the race, because we've seen how effective that can be, particularly in the hands of Tornado. That's how Leclerc's been managing to win races. He had an excellent race setup for Silverstone, as well as a few other races where Leclerc and Kiminen have made their way up the order. How's Leclerc doing actually? He's in 6th place at the moment. And I think that is a legitimate 6th place, but on a 2-stop strategy he may well be struggling towards the end of the race. Here comes the chase, and Caracciola was 2/10 quicker than Farina on the first sector. She's got a Mitchell in front of her, who will surely get out of the way pretty quickly. It's Chuck Bucknam. But Kiminen is quicker than Caracciola, so Kiminen lapping pretty quickly in this final stint of the race on his medium Firestone tyres. 3.5 tenths in the middle sector. Caracciola took out of Alessandro Farina. And Chuck Bucknam, he's made 3 stops as well, so he's not doing too badly on his fresh set of tyres, but Caracciola getting closer. And still 3/10 quicker in the final sector, so that's the best part of a second that Caracciola took out of Farina on that lap. And when is Bucknam going to move out of the way? Kiminen is 3.9 seconds behind Caracciola at the end of that lap. As we switch to Thomas Gonzalez, Now looking at Valtteri Bottas for 9th place. That was a heavy defence from Valtteri Bottas. Desperate to hold on to what is 9th place. At some point, Mason Taylor must have done pretty well in his pit stops because he's now up to 7th place in the CBA, getting the jump on James Clark, who made that later pit stop compared to Charles Leclerc and has actually lost track position to Mason Taylor. So Taylor doing pretty well in that middle stint. And it's his teammate we're concentrating on at the moment, still behind the Bottas blockade, as Caracciola has now caught up to Alessandro Farina in the battle for 2nd place. Needs to stay close as she can through these sequence of corners, and that is pretty close. She's in good shape to try and make the overtake for 2nd. And there's some more traffic in front. It is a Tilsley, and I think it is George Russell, because we've just seen Chuck Buckman be lapped. So George Russell, the next driver to be lapped, and here comes the attack. Farina trying to defend up the inside, and Caracciola playing it cautiously at the moment, so you better not wait for too long because Väinö Kimmonen was more than a second quicker than the pair of these on that lap. And of course all of this is helping Kevin Magnussen to eke out the gap between himself and the rest of the field. Let's having a speculative look through Thurman Massa corner. And further back, let's see how Taylor and Clark are doing, because I'm expecting Clark to be quicker than Taylor in this final stint of the race. I'm also expecting Taylor to be very difficult to overtake due to the nature of the CBA car. And Lewis Hamilton having a fairly lonely run now, up in 5th place. He is on all the tyres now. Is this the attack from James Clark versus Mason Taylor? Both these drivers are about to be lapped, but Clark making the move, stick just about, yes, through the first corner. So Clark up into 7th, and that will bolster Ajayrious championship challenge. As we see around, is that going to be around the outside from Alonso and Sebastian Vettel? Very, very good move there from Fernando Alonso, as Vettel got caught out there by Valtteri Bottas. Now the battle for 2nd once again. Is this Caracciola going to take 2nd place? It is! Caterina Caracciola moves up into 2nd place as Sebastian Vettel in the other Andrew has blown his engine. So both Andrews, the only retirements of the race, as a lock-up in front of him. I think that's Nolan Bryant trying to lap a monolith. So just starting to get a little bit hairy in the final part of the race. And the engine has cut out now, and Vettel will be pulling off the circuit anytime soon. He's making it difficult. Oh, goodness me, that was Farina that hit him! That was a massive calamity! That was Vettel not getting off the circuit and has caused a massive accident with Alessandro Farina. Championship leader Alessandro Farina out of the race in one of the most unexpected and cruel ways possible. So here's the replay of it. Turning right, and Vettel was on the racing line, so he has to shoulder a lot of the responsibility, but Farina, you have to say, was a bit reckless in keeping it flat out. I know he's under pressure from Väinö Kimmonen, but a little bit of caution was needed. And that was a Christmas present right there for Väinö Kimmonen. So rounding the next sequence of corners, this is now a battle for 5th place between Charles Leclerc and James Clark, and they're about to be lapped by Kevin Magnussen. That's just how fast the FJR has been this afternoon. But goodness me, that was a dramatic turn of events, and one that could prove more interesting in the championship. I know Farina has got a fairly comfortable lead, but you never know. You never know, that could, if FJR or Shake and Bake or Tornado continue to pump in good results, and if Farina continues to be as unfortunate as he was then, we could still have a championship battle. We've got James Clark challenging Charles Leclerc into the first corner, and tight up the inside. They're just about hanging on, and they're about to be lapped by Magnussen very soon, but it's Clark who takes 5th place. So he needs that, actually, because now that Farina's out of the race, Tornado are going to close in on the championship leaders come the end of this race, providing they can keep going in the final 9 laps or so. And we've got another retirement, and it's a monolith of Esteban Ocon. Engine failure in the back of the monolith. So that's the first of the hearts out of the race. As we now look at Fernando Alonso, who's going to have a bit of a job getting past the CBA racing drivers. Here's the first of them. It's Thomas Gonzalez. And Alonso not even bothering to challenge Gonzalez. His head is down a little bit, I have to say. Ever since Austria, where he clattered with James Clark. But never mind, because Thomas Gonzalez's Judd engine has gone, so Alonso gifted 8th place. And that could cause a bit of a concern for Taylor and the race-leading FJRs. Remember, CBAs do tend to be very aggressive. That is a barbecue right there. The CBA is a little bit smegged as he chops in front of another Willows runner. That will be the lapped Roman Grosjean. And, well, creating an unnecessary haze behind him. Come on, time to pull over now, Thomas. Oh, he's still going to keep going. He's going to try and be classified. And Sergio Perez now moves up into 9th place. Nolan Bryant moves up into 10th place. And reliability, the mice are starting to get into the machinery, as one would say. That's Katerina Caracciola getting a bit too close for comfort. And that's getting a bit close for comfort between Perez and Nolan Bryant. And for some reason Perez doesn't want to lap the Willows, but now he has done round the outside of 4. That's a battle that could become a battle for the final point if something happens to the top 8, which with 5 laps to go is Magnussen, Caracciola. You could just see her in the background there. Kinnunen 3rd, Hamilton 4th, Clark 5th, Leclerc 6th, Taylor 7th and Alonso 8th. It's now Nolan Bryant up into 9th place. Just about. Perez is still side by side with the American going through Hamilton corner. Perez, I think, is going to hang on to that 9th place. Is he round the outside of turn 4? Is Nolan Bryant? Yes, Nolan Bryant takes 9th place off of Sergio Perez. As we switch focus to Kevin Magnussen, and FJR have been very much on it since the start of the Hungaroring meeting, and considering they're on the 18 chassis, this has come at a very timely point of the season with the summer shutdown coming up. Since the start of the season, it's been clear that they've had a very good car aerodynamically, but they've had a bit of an issue with straight line speed. Slowly but surely, FJR have been working to eradicate some of this, and to the point where they were actually quite competitive at Hockenheim. Qualified 2nd and 3rd, Caracciola ahead of Magnussen. Once again, Caracciola qualifying ahead of Magnussen for this race, and warm-up has shown that FJR have been the car to beat, and they've demonstrated that. 3-stop strategy has helped out, but it's worked out very well. So, just a half a lap to go now for Kevin Magnussen. Last won at the 2016 Macau Grand Prix. That was ahead of Lewis Hamilton, who had become a 4-time champion in that very race. Magnussen yet to win a championship. He would dearly love to win one. Can he do so? Well, it's going to be a tall ask, but this is a good starting point going into the summer shutdown, rounding the final corner, and it is going to be Kevin Magnussen who returns to winning ways for FJR. Excellent performance from himself, and we're just waiting further back. That is Clark and Leclerc classified 5th and 6th. Is it going to be an FJR 1-2? It is an FJR 1-2. 2 FJRs on the podium for the first time since 2006. And that will be Magnussen's 5th career victory. I think he had 4 during the 2016 season. And winning by nearly half a minute. Väinö Kinnunen, another solid performance from himself in the Tornado. Possible contender for a driver of the day, although just ask Kevin Magnussen. He'll he'll be doing something. Lewis Hamilton, a solid result for himself in the Mitchell 4th, ahead of Clark 5th. Leclerc takes 6th, and very good drive for Mason Taylor, actually, from 17th up to 7th. And Fernando Alonso, a slightly down Fernando Alonso, but at least he salvages the final point. Probably at the expense of Thomas Gonzalez, who had that engine failure towards the end of the race. Engines also went in the back of Esteban Ocon and the two Andrews, and Vettel causing the most dramatic moment of the race when Alessandro Farina creamed into the back of him, rounding that treacherous turn 11. Now, what does that do for the Drivers' Championship? Well, Kimmonen's third now moves him to within 16 points of Alessandro Farina. Fernando Alonso does still hold third place at the moment, ahead of James Clark, who closes the gap on the three-time champion. Leclerc 5th, and Kevin Magnussen still 6th, but 35 points now, the gap between himself and Farina. Lewis Hamilton 7th, Nolan Bryant 8th, and the top 10 completed by Thomas Gonzalez and Sebastian Vettel. As for the team's championship, it is Gajera who still lead, but Tornado do close the gap a little bit. It's now 109 points that Tornado are on, 17 points behind Gajera, and Shake and Bake, if they continue at that rate, they may well have to look over their shoulder, because FJR's 1-2, now that their 18 car is right where they want it to be, they could be looking at being the highest placed Yorkshire team for the rest of the season. So that concludes the Hungarian Grand Prix. It's the summer shutdown, and in between then and the Belgian Grand Prix, we'll have the 1995 FF1M season. So tune in for that.